Okay. Let me check. Let me double make sure we're streaming. I think we are. Yes, we are.
Yes.
Okay, we're good. All right. Start again from the top.
Okay. Welcome to the Android Please podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Whitwam.
I'm Cody Toombs.
I'm Jordan Palmer.
And I'm Corbin Davenport.
And this is take 2 of the podcast this week. We had a minor technical issue, and so we're just going to take it from top. We're just like a minute or two in. So if you caught that initial stream, it's gone now. It's gone forever. That content has been lost to the ether of the internet. You will know. Nobody else will ever hear what we said. All the amazing secret things that we talked about.
Unless you find the broadcast on Twitch.
Yeah, don't do that. So we're going to talk about a number of things this week. Principally that Google just got fined a whole bunch of money by the EU.
And as an American, I can say this, they're wrong. They shouldn't be doing it.
Why are they hurting our companies? Come on. I'm just kidding. But yeah, they got paid. They got fined a butt ton of money. It was
literally a butt ton. It's $5 billion, which is the official butt ton. Okay, so according to the EU, Google did 3 things wrong. So this is all related to Android and the way they manage it. So first of all, if a company is going to make an Android phone and they want to partner with Google to get all the Google apps, but then they cannot also ship a phone that has a forked and incompatible version of Android. So they basically have to work with Google on all their phones. So the EU says that's not okay. Also, companies that want Google's Android, like they want the Play Store, they also have to include things like the Google app and Chrome, and that apparently, according to the EU, gives Google an unfair advantage because they have such a large market share in Europe. And then lastly, there was like a sort of a weird logistical thing, like they paid some carriers and OEMs to use Google search as the default on devices. I think that's probably the most obviously anti-competitive thing, but it's also the thing that is least related to Android as a platform. So presumably they could just not do that again. But there is some concern that the nature of this ruling could change how Google has to manage Android, because right now there's no license fee. Everybody who wants to make an Android phone with Google, they get to just do that, and they have to pay for whatever certification stuff has to happen, but there's no per device license fee. But if Google can't be confident that everybody who uses those devices will be using Google's services, then maybe they would need to make up that revenue in some other way.
Yeah. And I'm curious, does this fine mean Google has to do something in order to prevent additional fines, or is this just...
Yeah, well, they have 90 days to stop doing the things that they
Okay. I missed that part.
But Google did say, Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, posted a blog post right after this was official, explaining that why they disagree and that they're going to appeal. So that's going to happen. Things that sound very close to the Google hot word, because my home Max in the background is lighting up. Apparently, that thing is happening, but it hasn't shouted, I don't think. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Happened
to me a couple times.
So yeah, this is a lot of money, even for Google, and their stock did drop a little bit after it was announced. I don't know if it bounced back, but I don't know. I mean, are you guys concerned for the future of Android now? Do you feel like this is the beginning of the end?
I would be interested to see what changes Google makes to either the distribution agreement or the initial setup process. Because I remember when Microsoft got into that major lawsuit a decade ago over Internet Explorer's market share at the time, which was 90% or something, because this was 2002, 2003, something like that. They had to when you set up a Windows computer in Europe, and you set it up for the first time, they had to make it so that IE wasn't the default browser. A little pop-up would come up and you choose, do you want IE or Firefox or Opera or whatever.
The browser ballot. They don't have to do that anymore. But yeah, there was and there was like a big argument over like how they could present the options. Like they couldn't put at the top of the list, so it was like random every time.
Well, I kind of want that to happen again, because Windows 10 keeps bugging me to make Microsoft Edge the default browser.
And every time you try to switch.
Every time you get a Windows update, it's like, hey, you're not using Edge. What's up with that? Let me reset all your defaults. And
it's faster.
And the EU is just like,
battery.
The EU is like, no, that's fine. We don't care about Microsoft anymore. We care about Google now.
Yeah, exactly.
So are we all in agreement that this is kind of nonsense?
This is pretty nonsense.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, I can understand the, technically, if you explain, like, why the EU thinks this stuff is wrong. Like, I get the argument, but I don't think that this is a fundamental violation of antitrust regulations. This is just the way Google is running a platform that is very successful and is open source. And anybody who doesn't want to work with Google doesn't have to. Like, you don't have to make Google phones.
It's not like this.
You can just take Android and you can build Fire OS out of it.
So this really comes across to me as one of those situations where the EU has kind of, they don't have a great history given the GDPR, which went into, or it was voted in, 2 years ago and went fully into effect this year. Basically, that's, for anyone who doesn't follow, this is their new privacy laws, and they can't really be called guidelines. It's just outright laws regarding how you have to handle privacy, how you have to handle disclosure of any shared information. And by and large, the GDPR has been shot down by almost everyone as one of the worst things that they could have done, because it has done nothing to help privacy or really anybody in any way, shape, or form, but it's looking really terrible. And this feels like it's kind of coming from the same mindset of somebody started with a good argument for, hey, this Android thing is getting a little too powerful and too many people are using it. That's giving Google a big advantage that they could use to bully other companies. They could use to force their services. They could use to kind of take control that they shouldn't have. So it makes sense that they want to be careful about it. But at the same time, this is dumb. There's no better way to put it than that. They're basically picking the wrong things to make issues out of. And it's kind of just the only things that they really have in their tool chest. So they need to work out a better solution than this. And they really have to be more aware of what the actual sane choices are going to be. Because telling Google, hey, by the way, you're not allowed to, everyone else can pay carriers to have their search engine be featured, but we don't want you to because you made the OS. Like, that's dumb. That's unrealistic.
I mean,
that's
and it's
pretty much a double standard right there.
Is it? Don't most phones in Europe, they don't have carrier bloatware, right? Because everyone just buys phones unlocked.
I wouldn't go that far, but as far as I understand it, that's generally
okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like everyone buys unlocked, but a good amount of people do. Okay.
Right. As far as I understand it from people I've talked to.
Yeah, and obviously we'll hear from probably a couple of Europeans at some point over this, but I'm pretty sure that there's also, and I could be very wrong on this, but I think that system that Google came up with a few years ago that allowed carriers to sort of load software onto phones once you put a SIM card in. Yeah. I think that does allow them a little bit of control over this sort of stuff, so they can make a few things happen.
I also feel like there's kind of a misconception in the way this has been reported in the mainstream press. They seem to be under the impression that OEMs are not allowed to preload alternatives to the Google apps, which is true. Like anybody who's used a Samsung phone will know, like Samsung has alternatives for all of the Google apps pre-installed on the phone. Like that's not a thing. So I kind of don't even understand like why that's part of the EU's objection, because it's not. I mean, you can still ship the phone with all of these other things installed. I guess it's about default settings, I suppose.
I think that because doesn't Google require Chrome to be the default browser? Like you can't. Like if you
you know what though? Like this would be an easy fix. When you start up the phone, it just asks you, like this is already a UI in Android. It asks you what you want the default to be. The thing pops up from the bottom of the screen or whatever, and you say, okay, I want to do this one, and it's done. Like,
I don't know. Honestly, that makes a lot of the thing about this EU fine is that I can get from a consumer perspective why the EU would be worried, because when you have 90% of the smartphone market and your services are the defaults and all that, and most people don't change the defaults. That's why Internet Explorer was so big for so long, because no one cared enough to change their browser.
But you know what though? Now Chrome is the biggest browser, and that doesn't come as the default on anything except for Chromebooks, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's a thing people have learned how to do.
Right. So I think there is an argument you could make that maybe you could not set your stuff as the default, but yeah, I think the reasonable thing is just do the pop-up that says what default browser do you want, maybe what search engine, and that's it. I really think that's the only thing that needs to change.
Well, who's willingly going to use a search engine that's not Google?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, that's not because that it's been forced on us. It's just because Google's the best search engine.
I mean, there's a reason that Google has complete dominance in most markets because their search engine is just that much better. You can make the argument that maybe that's not a good thing, but we don't currently have any reason to think that Google is engaging in outright chicanery with the way it ranks things in its engine. And I think I'm kind of interested that the search engine stuff is where everybody's going when they're talking about this in mainstream media. More interesting and possibly concerning aspect is the forked Android stuff. That has the potential to actually be bad for consumers if OEMs are allowed to start making customized versions of Android that don't work with other Android devices while they're also selling certified Android devices. You don't want to buy a phone and find out that it doesn't work with anything else.
I see Huawei doing that.
Yeah, I could see Huawei doing it. The thing is, though, imagine what effect that has when somebody buys the phone and it's like, oh, hey, I can't use apps on this. Well, screw you, company. I'm sending it back. Which the EU actually has the best laws in the world regarding. Basically, you have the right, guaranteed right. You can return anything practically, and you have a really good grace period for it. So that's not the worst situation for them. And that would quickly become a market forces factor, because if you buy something that sucks and you're like, hey, well, I don't want it anymore, then that's going to cost whatever company that made it a ton of money.
Well, I mean, let's hope, but I mean, there could also just be alternative app stores on these things. Like if you make certain changes to Android and it doesn't work with the stuff that's distributed in the Play Store, maybe you can modify APKs and you can offer them on some other platform.
A la Xiaomi, Huawei.
People might not understand what they're getting isn't the version of Android that everybody else has.
Right, most people are not going to see that.
Well,
unless they ask their tech person.
I'm not sure if this was part of the equation, but what if you just couldn't brand it as Android, which I think is actually already part of the deal with forked Android.
Is Android not part of the open source?
Well, no, Android is a trademark now.
Yeah, in other words, you cannot call it Android if it doesn't meet the CTS.
So what? So if you download from the Android open source project and build your own, what is that called? Like, what is that software called? Do you have to give it a new name?
Well, that's what Amazon did.
Yeah, and yeah, again, Android is Google trademark now. So yeah, you couldn't use it without permission.
Interesting.
So I'm just going to throw this out there, and this is going to sound needlessly insulting, but at the same time, it's kind of meant that way. Is it at all possible that this is just because the EU doesn't have a company inside their borders that's doing stuff? And I mean this seriously. Many years ago, the problem was Microsoft, and Microsoft was a US company that was doing really well and had all this market dominance. And through time, it's been one US company after another that has completely dominated, and the EU has not had any power over what happens or where companies are operating. They've just had to sit by the sidelines, and the only power they actually have is they have a bunch of people. So all they can really do is say, we don't like what this company overseas is doing, so we're going to tell you, you either can't operate here and you're going to lose this huge market share, or you're going to pay us money, because that's kind of the only thing we can truly tell you to do. Like, this feels like their one and only outlet for the fact that they just don't have anything in their country that's producing that big market dominance.
Well, I think part of the reason for that is that the EU was sort of philosophically opposed to letting companies get that gigantic. Like, I don't think that any company in Europe that approached the size of Google or Microsoft, I don't think would be a single company anymore.
But okay, but what if one did? Do you think they would be this harsh?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. That's a hypothetical, and it's hard for me to say. I don't know yeah, totally. the motivation of these people, but I feel like Europe in general is just, their system of government is generally opposed to companies becoming monopolies in the first place. So, okay, let's maybe talk about another Google OS, one that you've probably never used. It's called Fuchsia, and supposedly Google is full steam ahead on this. And apparently, we'll have a Fuchsia phone in 5 years. And I don't know about you, but I totally believe that Google can focus on something for 5 years.
It will ship with a brand new messaging app.
Yeah, that's the only reason Google can focus on it for that long, because they really want that new messaging app. Okay, well, so Fuchsia, obviously, it's a complete ground-up new OS. It doesn't have the Linux kernel like Android does. It has its own kernel and a completely new UI and a new framework and everything. But it doesn't, you can't buy anything that runs Fuchsia right now. There was a developer build that worked on, I think, the Pixelbook.
Yeah, Ron Amadio got it on the Pixelbook.
Yeah,
you can get it on
the dev builds on the Pixelbook and I believe 2 other PCs. Yeah, but yeah, it's you compile it yourself.
It is a long way from being a thing that anybody would want to use. But supposedly on the roadmap, Google has got 100 engineers working to make Fuchsia operate on smart home devices and phones and eventually computers. I don't know. Do we believe that this will actually be a thing?
I'd like it to, just because I'd like to see something address Android's shortcomings that doesn't break Android. Because Android has so many long-term issues like OEM phones getting updates slow, fragmentation, which is sort of an issue, not as much as it used to be, I don't think, but still pressing. And this has the potential to maybe fix all those issues, and maybe make the OS a little bit better. I'm curious if maybe this will work better on low-end phones, which is something Android's kind of struggled with over the years because it's using a real-time kernel instead of the full-blown Linux kernel. So my understanding is that it's supposed to be a little bit more lightweight and just run generally better. But I'm not an OS engineer.
Yeah.
But and I'd also be interested to see how they pull off running the same OS across phones and laptops and
yeah, that would be what I'm curious about.
I mean,
how is that
ask
work?
Microsoft how well that worked with Windows 10 and Windows 8.
Exactly.
And
Microsoft's really the only one that's tried that.
Yeah, it didn't go well. But they were starting with Windows, which is a giant clunky piece of software.
It's a giant piece
components from 20 years ago.
Yeah, and even Microsoft Windows Phone and later Windows 10 Mobile, those weren't based on Windows. They were based on Windows CE, which is like a little bit different. But this would be the same exact OS running on different platforms, just with different designs, presumably on top for the UIs.
I remember I had a family member who used a Windows 8 phone for some unknown reason, and it like crashed in some bizarre way, like it wouldn't boot anymore. But when you turned it on, it would pop up that black screen with white text that you see on Windows computers sometimes, and it would ask you to insert an OS disk into the phone. And I really wish that I'd taken a picture of that because it was hilarious.
Yeah.
It wasn't so hilarious for him though because he lost all his photos. But
no. Well, he didn't have an OS disk, so that's his problem.
Yeah. Also, no way to cram it into the phone.
Yeah, you gotta plug in a CD drive.
Yeah, he doesn't use a Windows phone anymore.
Good for him.
I should
like pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and I don't know. I'm just interested in this from a development standpoint. And also, one thing that wasn't touched, Bloomberg was the site that originally covered this, and one thing they didn't ask any of the engineers, or they didn't publish it, was what sort of backwards compatibility this OS would have, because presumably Google cannot replace Android with something that cannot run existing Android apps.
Yeah, I think as we learned from this EU decision that we just talked about, the Play Store is important. Having apps is important.
Yes.
That is what keeps OEMs coming back to Google. And yeah, so I mean, I feel like because Google is building this from the ground up, they can do whatever they want with it. I feel like if it's going to be a thing for phones, it would be built in such a way that it could integrate with Android and would run Android apps. They might even call it Android, when it's done and actually available. It could be like Android Next or Android something. They can call it whatever they want because it's theirs. It could just be a different framework that is just better in every way than classic Android.
Yeah, I do wonder what they would eventually call this when it hits the market, because if they called it something besides Android, I have to wonder how many consumers are going to be like, oh, this seems silly, I'm just going to keep buying Android phones or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, and then they have to worry about losing control of Android even more. If Google's we're not going to do Android stuff anymore, everybody could just be well, we'll just take the open source Android code and keep doing Android. Suck on that, Google.
Yeah. But yeah, Google's been making a ton of headway into containers to run Android apps on Chrome OS. So I'd imagine this OS would have something like that to run Android apps.
Yeah.
And to be fair, with the way the Play Store is going, once they come out with this, Google's going to be fairly aggressive about shutting down anything that's running older APIs. So they can already basically say, you know what, anything that's more than about 2 years old, we're just not even going to let it on the OS.
Yeah.
Or at least that'll be their initial cutoff. It'll have to go longer than that.
And they could just say, if you submit an app to the Play Store going forward, it has to support whatever Fuchsia features or whatever they've rolled out.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I imagine that just cutting off early APIs would vastly simplify making an Android container, because there's so much. I mean, this happens with any operating system after an extended period of time. You just get so much cruft because of these old APIs that have been around forever, like Windows. So, yeah, that would probably make things a lot easier.
Yeah. So, as Google is growing and changing and getting bigger, there's HTC, which is not. And there are rumors now that HTC is going to basically pull out of India, which is one of the biggest smartphone markets in the world.
Yes. So the Economic Times, which is a big publication in India for anyone that doesn't follow that, they did a report earlier today that said 3 major India executives for HTC were quitting. So that's the head of Indian operations, the head of sales, and the head of product. Also, that 70 to 80 employees in the country were being laid off, and that HTC would end all its distribution agreements in the country. So basically, it would leave India completely. But then HTC responded and said they're going to keep selling phones in India, and that the reduction in staff was to reflect local and regional market conditions, which I think means no one is buying our phones. And then they said there are still 10 employees left in India. I don't think that's very.
I mean, HTC is just, it is not positioned to do well in India because look at the phones that they make. They're not very good. Sorry, HTC, they're not very good. And they're really expensive. Yeah. Those are both problems for India, especially. Well, yeah. I mean, when you have, it basically, Samsung and OnePlus are trading back and forth as like the top OEM in India. And Samsung is sort of like, it's Samsung. It has, a name people trust. And yeah, and Xiaomi is also, ascendant, but these devices that offer very good performance and good specs for not a lot of money have been, very popular there. And HTC just cannot compete with that.
Yeah, I've heard HTC's carrier compatibility in India is pretty wonky, whereas some of the mainstays like Samsung, Xiaomi, and OnePlus just work really well.
Yeah, across the country. Like, Motorola actually sells a surprising number of phones in India too, because they have very, very good carrier compatibility. Like their phones work on everything.
Yeah. That's the bad thing is that even some of these companies that are eating HTC's lunch in other markets aren't doing well in India because it's so hyper competitive. Like Samsung, I don't think does well in India at all. Like most of their recent phones have not been great values compared to other devices you can get.
Well, they haven't been good values, but they do sell reasonably well just because it's Samsung.
Yeah, it's the brand name recognition. I honestly can't think of any phones HTC sells in India. I don't think we've covered any of them.
There was like a Desire or something like that a couple months ago, but
it's probably the same like $300 budget phones that they sell unlocked in the US.
Yeah, that's a $300 phone. That's not as good as a $200 phone from somebody else.
Yeah, and the other thing that was interesting in this report is that HTC apparently owes a lot of money to distributors in India. They reportedly owe millions of rupees to a couple companies in India, and the representative said, "We are working with channel partners to ensure no disruption on business and service to our customers." So they might have issues selling phones in the near future.
I mean, I feel like those companies might not get their money because HTC might just go out of business. And we were talking a few weeks ago about how much money they are losing after they announced like big losses for June when they just launched their new phone. And it's like to the point that they will have blown through all of their Google money pretty. Oh, and they're not making anything now. Obviously, it's hard to see how they can survive longer without a significant infusion of cash.
Well, even that, I mean, it's very telling when every smartphone maker is putting so many resources and money into India. And HTC is scaling back. Maybe not pulling out, but they're definitely, they laid off most of their employees. And that's another sign that HTC is kind of digging themselves into a hole that I don't think they can get out of.
Well, to be fair, if everyone is throwing all that money in, do you want to be competing with them?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, if you can compete, ideally, yes, you do. But maybe HTC just, knows that it can't. And now it's, I don't know, but I don't know where they're going to go. Like, where are they going to direct those resources?
Yeah, at this point, they almost need to start targeting countries that no one talks about.
I mean, I bet that they probably sell some phones in Taiwan. It's probably, home turf.
You'd expect so.
But, we've talked about HTC more in the last few months than probably in the last several years, and it's always because sign that they're about to crash and burn. So I don't know. Things are not going well. You know what else is not going to go well? If Samsung launches a Bixby smart speaker, which is a thing that was rumored to be happening, and I do not understand why.
I feel like I heard about this near CES from someone, but I just blew it off as like, oh, Samsung is too stupid to do that.
Yeah, I believe that I was told something about this as a concept, like a thing that could happen.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like it would happen. Because look, Bixby's really bad. It's like, it's useless. I don't even understand. Like,
I'd rather use
Alexa
on a phone.
Bixby a question. Like, if you ask Bixby a question, it doesn't have any answers. It won't do anything except like open your settings and like do things on the phone. Like you can turn on your flashlight or something.
The speaker will be great at changing your brightness.
Have we considered the possibility Bixby is someone's pet project?
Yeah. I don't know who could be influential enough that they would put a Bixby button on all of their phones. Just because man, they're really all in on Bixby, but it's just so bad.
It's real bad. And I mean, I want Bixby to do well just so we have some competition, because now it's just Google and Amazon having at it. Because Siri's
and Apple, kind of.
Well, Siri's terrible.
Yeah, Siri's bad. I don't think it's as bad as Bixby.
No, it's not. But Siri is okay at some stuff.
Yeah, it's useful. Bixby, from my understanding,
Cortana's pretty bad.
Yeah, Cortana is bad.
I don't think Cortana is being developed anymore. I think Microsoft's just like it's in Windows.
If they would let you do things other than default to Bing and Edge, I would probably use it more. But anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why Bixby's bad. I mean, well, I know why is that Google's putting this crazy amount of resources into Google Assistant. I don't know if Samsung's just floating it. I'm not sure what their strategy with Bixby is, but I don't know if anyone would buy the speaker. Maybe if it sounded great.
I don't even really understand what it would do. Like, what would be the point of having a Bixby speaker?
Yeah, well, other than to open the settings on my S9. Okay. Does Bixby do home control? I don't think it does.
There was supposed to be some home integration stuff. I don't know if that ever rolled out.
Does it do smart things?
I don't know. It should. If it doesn't,
it should do smart things.
I would be very alarmed if it did.
Because that would be the only thing it does. Because it doesn't hook into any of the. I'm sure they could probably hook into like Spotify or something for a music service.
Okay,
but
I could legitimately see a Bixby speaker that is also a SmartThings hub being a decent product. Like
I mean, but
could see that.
Okay, but like the SmartThings hub should not cost $300 if this is rumored to cost. That's crazy.
No.
The SmartThings hub is like they're like $40 or something.
A little more than that, I think. But yeah,
I think the $300 price tag seems to point to that they're making. It's probably going to be a nice speaker, but I obviously don't know how the functionality is going to be, because that's, I mean, like we said in the post, that's right up there with the Google Home Max and Apple HomePod, and both of those are fantastic speakers first and smart speakers second.
So this strategy seems kind of like the same thing they did with watches. Basically, there was nothing of interest there wasn't enough interest going on for all of the watches that were coming out already, but there was at least there were bones there for something that could possibly become a market. So Samsung tried to come along and basically co-opt it with their own OS. And now they see that speakers are the thing. So they're going to come out with a speaker product, and it doesn't have to be good. They just have to put something in there, and if it takes off, great. If it doesn't, then oh well. It's a Samsung strategy.
But smartwatches, like, there were clearly like a lot of bad products. Like, smartwatches have had issues and continue to have issues. So I think there was a reason for Tizen watches to exist. That is not the case with smart assistants, where Google Assistant is really obviously good and probably years ahead of anything Bixby could be. It just strikes me as really bizarre that Samsung would even try to sell directly with like the Google Home.
Okay, but good is it, whether that's an objective or not objective opinion on it. And to be fair, we have lots of articles that we've posted basically saying, wow, can you believe Google Assistant still doesn't do this? But, you know,
because like we're nitpicking, like that's what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at what Google Assistant can do now compared to what you could do with voice control 2 years ago, it's pretty amazing.
But
I'm just glad they figured out reminders.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
But to an executive at Samsung, that's not what they, that's not what they, first off, they probably aren't paying any attention at all. But all they're seeing is, here's a product category. Who cares if someone else is doing it well? We can probably come along and do this thing too.
So that hypothetical executive at Samsung only has a job because Samsung is so profitable that they can afford to do stupid things like this.
That describes about 30% of their different industries. That's fine. They have the money to screw around.
Yeah.
You're telling me those smart refrigerators aren't flying off shelves?
I mean, let me just offer some advice to the hypothetical executive. Don't do this. It's a very bad idea. Okay, let's move on to chip designer. We're going to talk about a chip designer. Corbin, what is this on this?
Yeah, Corbin.
Because Facebook's coming out with the new Cool Ranch chip. I'm just kidding. All the comments, they were like, "Oh, I hope." Yeah, the top comment is, "I hope they design a good version of those sour cream and peach."
So Corbin, you wrote this. So explain why we should care.
Yeah. So Facebook, they bought Oculus a couple of years ago, and they're trying to develop more hardware. A couple months ago, it was rumored that they were working on their own smart display, like an Echo Show or the new Google Assistant smart screens. But then they delayed that after the privacy scandal a couple months ago, because no one would want to buy a smart speaker from Facebook. I don't really know if anyone would still want to, but whatever. And around that time, there were rumors that Google wanted to develop their own chipsets, one of which would be to give Alexa speakers some offline functionality, which would be pretty cool. But the news now is that Facebook has poached one of Google's top chip engineers. So they hired Shandhir Ravi. I don't know. I'm not going to try to butcher his name. But he previously worked as Google's senior director of engineering, and he helped make the Pixel Visual Core, which is the chip in the Pixel 2 and Pixel 2 XL that speeds up camera processing. He also helped develop a security chip for Google's servers, their secret servers that only Google uses. So it's not super clear what kind of hardware these chips will go in that this person will design for Facebook. Could be a new Oculus headset, could be the rumored Echo Show Facebook clone. We don't know, but it's interesting because it's Facebook and they're trying to get more into hardware and develop more consumer products, which is slightly alarming.
To me, just sounds like Zuckerberg wanting to play around some more.
Yeah, exactly. You got to blow all that money. Just
I
like
mean,
Samsung
he's not going to be able to run for president, so like he's got to do something.
Yeah, maybe he'll still try.
Yeah, R&D.
Yeah, maybe.
Every major company, once they have enough money, they're going to start doing more and more R&D. And Facebook is entering that stage of its life where it's time to play around. It's time to see, hey, can we make a thing that's going to be super cool? And they're diversifying what they do, which to some extent, cheers to Facebook. That's good for them. To some extent, oh my God, I'm terrified. Please help. Please help. Because I can't think of too many companies I'm more afraid of what they'll come up with than Facebook. But hey, this is bound to happen. It's just very interesting that they're poaching very specifically one of Google's top people.
Yes, especially while Google's trying so hard to poach people from Apple and other companies. So they're all stealing the same group of people.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if Facebook is like confident now that they can start releasing this kind of creepy hardware stuff, because no matter what happens, they just keep on going. Like, people haven't stopped using Facebook despite all of the crazy things that have happened. I mean, like a month or two ago, like they rolled out some sort of update on the site and reset a bunch of security settings. Like, I know people whose security settings were suddenly reset and they were posting things publicly and didn't even know. I mean, can you imagine the outcry if that happened to Google? If like they reset everybody's security settings, and like Facebook just keeps on ticking.
Yeah, and especially making a smart speaker or something along those lines, they would have to tread incredibly carefully, because there's always been, since the first Echo speaker came out, there's been this massive group of people that are just waiting for these are all spying on you, and they say, "Ah, I told you so." A lot of them came out the woodworks when the Home Mini was released, and Artem said they was spying on it.
yeah, that defective button. No, but you know what? I totally, if Facebook launches like a speaker or an Echo Show thingy or whatever, like I totally believe it's going to have some giant stupid security hole. It's going to do some horrible things. See, look how terrible Facebook is, and everybody is just going to keep using Facebook, because how else are you going to see grandma's memes?
Yeah.
Or how else is grandma going to see your memes? It's the more important question.
Yeah.
I don't know. Grandma got some dank memes.
Grandma got around.
Do your grandparents not post memes? My grandma is all over.
Mine don't. Mine do some crazy political content. That's all I'm going to
do. Yeah, and
my grandparents just reshare all the memes. All of them.
See,
they're bad memes, though. In all honesty, they're not good ones.
The thing is, what we're still talking about, the difference between Facebook may or may not be making a product that they would be presumably selling in stores or even over the internet, whatever, and versus using just a social networking site. People aren't going to go away from the social networking site because a product sucks. So I don't think that's going to impact them. The counterpoint is their product is probably going to suck and probably won't sell to enough people for it to ever matter.
Yeah, I can think of two ways this could go well. The first is that whatever they release, they just either spin it off as a separate company or give it a different brand name that is not Facebook. Like Oculus. Oculus is still not really branded as a Facebook product. It's still kind of its own thing. So, like Google does with Nest, they could maybe keep a lot of the stigmatism towards Facebook off of whatever they release. The other thing I can think of is if they design chips just for themselves. Google for years has been developing their own server architecture. They use all their own hardware, all their own processors. Not processors, but they use a lot of their own chip designs in their servers, and that's how they can. That's how they can index the web, the entire internet, as quickly as they do. So maybe Facebook wants something like that. They want their own server hardware that does what they want it to do, process information faster, whatever.
Yeah, it might be.
So maybe this won't end up
a business thing, and we'll never hear about this guy or his chips ever again.
Yeah, okay. Very possible.
Is there anything else that we want to chat about this week?
Not that I know of.
I have another Chromebox. Unplug it real quick.
Oh, the Zenfone 5Q is a laughably bad, overpriced phone. But you can all wait for the review on that one.
Okay, here's the Chromebox. It's the second one. This one is from CTL, which is apparently a very large manufacturer of Chrome devices, because they have like 20 Chromebooks. And I believe this is their first Chromebox. It's very much on the opposite spectrum as the one from Acer reviewed. The one from Acer had an i5. This has a Pentium something in it. But yeah, I actually thought this would be worse than what it actually was, because I was worried, Pentium, it's probably going to be one of those awful rebranded Atom chips that everyone hates, but actually runs pretty well.
Is this thing like targeted at education, or can people actually buy it?
Yes, it is. Well, people can buy it, but they're not marketing it to consumers at all. They want this. It's like the Acer where they just want schools to buy like 1,000 of these and put them in their classrooms.
You know what I want is I want a Chrome base back, because that's what I want to buy for my grandparents.
Was that the one that was like
the
a
HDMI
HDMI stick?
It was like a Chrome iMac.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because they want the big display, high resolution, sort of, and Chrome. And that way I don't have to buy them a monitor.
I'm kind of surprised there aren't any of those now.
Because LG did one in 2016, I think, was the last one. Something like that. But
yeah. I know, I'm surprised like HP or Dell isn't making those, because they make a lot of those all-in-one systems.
Yeah, I would think that would be like a really popular grandparents' birthday gift or something.
Yeah, that's what like I said, that's exactly what I would buy them. I just don't want to buy them a 2-year-old computer right now.
Yeah. And well, especially it probably doesn't support Android apps. I wouldn't
imagine, no.
Yeah.
No,
well, that's the nice thing about this new generation of Chromebook, is that they all work with the Play Store, which is super nice. And also about the Chromebase, CTL told me that they also have a bundle that they're marketing to schools where this comes with an adjustable touchscreen that you can use with this box, which is pretty neat. So that's how they're angling it.
So you might not know the answer to this, but so if you put a touchscreen on a Chromebox, does it operate in tablet mode, or does it know?
I have no idea, because they did not send me that. I should probably ask them though.
Yeah, because I'm just now I've been playing with the Pixelbook lately. I haven't had a touchscreen Chromebook, like a modern one for a long time, and like it's interesting the way it switches between tablet UI and regular.
Yeah.
External keyboard, no matter like what I do to the Pixelbook, it won't go into tablet mode, so the screen doesn't rotate at all. But like then if you unplug the keyboard and it's like in tent mode, it'll automatically flip over and like do the bigger touchscreen UI.
Like the Acer Spin 11 that I reviewed a little while ago did the same thing. So I'm not entirely sure how it does it.
My Chromebook Flip, when I initially bought it, the tablet mode in Chrome OS was pretty bad. You could not do any multitasking at all. It would just maximize whatever you had open, and that was it. There wasn't really like an easy way to switch between stuff, and they've been improving that a lot, because now there's Chrome OS detachables and tablets. But yeah, I have no idea about sticking a touchscreen on this, but honestly, this seems like a great grandparent.
How many money dollars is it?
I believe this one is it's 200 to 250, something like
Plus
that.
the monitor. Does it have a keyboard and mouse?
I think.
Yeah,
I believe so, because they have to come with the special Chrome OS keyboard.
So like at 200, if it comes with a keyboard and mouse,
plus a decent 1080p monitor.
I can totally see that being a viable thing to buy for people.
Yeah.
If you can get, because you can get an okay monitor for like $100, like a 24-inch monitor probably.
Yeah, and especially if they're already running like a really old Windows PC or something. You can just.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I know it's like the next time my dad needs a computer, I'm not going to let him buy another Windows laptop.
Oh yeah, Chrome is the next thing for my grandparents.
Yeah. And I was very surprised by the performance of this, because again, it has some Pentium chip I was expecting. Like Jordan complained in your I think it was the Acer Flip. How it like stuttered with like 5 tabs open.
Yeah, right? It was bad. Trying to do work on that thing, like the stuff that I do for work, was just terrible.
Yeah, I was surprised. I could actually get my work done on this, which is 10, 15 Chrome tabs plus a couple Android apps.
Mm-hmm.
Now it was everything took a second, but it didn't really slow down at all. I think because it has, I think 4 gigs of RAM. I think, and most of these low-end Chromebooks have 2, which is not.
Yeah, 2 is not enough.
Not enough for Chrome anymore.
Even with Chrome OS.
Yeah, it's
being optimized, it's not great.
Yeah, when you think about like you've used an Android phone with 2 gigs of RAM, you would want to murder.
Oh yeah.
It would be insufferable. It would turn you into a monster.
Yes. Also, I'm reviewing the Nokia 3.1, which is it's a nice phone. My biggest complaint is that there's no fingerprint sensor.
But it's also 160
bucks.
bucks.
I'm actually very envious that you're reviewing that phone, because I'm reviewing this $1,000 Sony phone. I don't like it.
It's okay, Ryan. We can both suffer because I've got another crappy Asus phone.
We're all just using these phones that we hate right now, except for Corbin. And he's got the cheap.
Yeah.
Hey, too bad for all you guys. I'm walking around with Pixels.
I've got the low end. I've got the low end budget phone.
It's like, getting to review phones is great and all, but sometimes you have to use a phone that you hate.
There was one that I refused. It was the Honor 7S, and I got it, and I was like, I'm not doing this. It was so bad.
Yeah. The only like absolutely terrible. Well, the Raven car thing I reviewed recently is not great, but that wasn't like something I had to carry around as my phone. The first phone I reviewed was that Mizu phone that like it didn't have Play services pre-installed, and when you installed it, it drained the battery like crazy. So I remember I was working at Target at the time, and I could not bring it as my only phone to Target, or I would just not have a phone by the end of my shift. It would die instantly. So I had to bring.
That's actually how Android used to be. I don't know if anybody remembers.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like back in the Galaxy Nexus days, I remember that thing was just a little furnace in my pocket all day.
Thunderbolt, Droid Bionic. Yeah, those things didn't last more than 5 or 6 hours.
I had my first Android device was the 5-inch Galaxy Player, and at the time that was a massive phone. Almost every week at school, someone would be like, "Wow, that is a big phone." Like,
dude, HTC Evo, then Droid X.
Yeah.
Those were just like 4.3-inch phones, weren't they?
Yeah, that's when people thought those were.
They were like.
Well, the Droid X was massive. Like even next to like the Pixel 2, it's still big.
I'm pretty sure somewhere on the site there was a poll where we very clearly established 4.3-inch screens were the sweet spot.
Oh man, that is just painfully small.
I think the smallest phone I've owned recently was the original Moto G, and that had like a 4.7, and that was cutting it for me. I was having a lot of problems with that.
Hey, my smallest screen is 5-inch.
Yeah.
I don't even have one that small. The BlackBerry's around here somewhere, but that's just a weird.
Yeah, that's cheating.
Terrible display and everything wrong with it.
Well, see, for as much smaller as our phone screens were back then, we made up for it by also carrying around extra battery packs.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
We all were very good at knowing when our next charge was going to be.
I think I had about 3 or 4 spare batteries that I carried around.
I remember I had a little external battery charging dock for the Galaxy Nexus, because that's just what you had to do.
Yep.
So I could always have an extra charged battery ready to go.
Yep.
And
I remember when phones had replaceable batteries.
That was so weird. No, no, it's actually kind of funny because wireless charging was really kind of meant as that cool little interim solution where, sure, you might not have super great battery life anyway, but you could just kind of go places and set your phone down and, soak up a 10, 15, 20 minutes worth of juice and then pick up and go somewhere else. And yeah, that worked out.
Yeah, that only works if wireless chargers are literally every place you set your phone down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, then I think we reminisced enough. We can call it for this week. So if anybody out there has comments, questions, or concerns, you can direct those to podcast@androidpolice.com, and we will see you next week.
Good night, everyone.
Yay, the return of Jordan's good night.